Hello, everybody. Today we're going to talk about the quadratic formula. Okay, so we're going to start out with some quadratic equations that are really easy to solve, like this one right here. Okay, so with this one, it's really simple. You square root both sides of this thing, and x is equal to plus or minus 5, and you are done with that one. Super easy when they're of that form. Okay, next you've got something that looks like this, okay, where we might have to do a little division here first. So we'll divide both sides by 4. We get x squared is 7. And then we'll go ahead and square root both of those sides. And we get x equals plus or minus the square root of 7, which we're just going to leave like that because that's the exact answer. Okay. Then we get something like this. Okay, it's a little bit more complicated than the other one was. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to subtract 3 from both sides. Okay, so we get negative 2x squared equals negative 32. And then we'll divide by negative 2. And we'll get x squared is 16. And then we will go ahead and square root that. And we get x equals plus or minus 4. Again, really simple to do. Okay. But what happens when we get something of this form right here, ax squared plus bx plus c, something that looks like this? Now, this one, a lot of students, the first thing that they'll try to do is they'll try to add 3 to both sides, and then they get this, and now they're stuck. Okay, you can't go on. So you can't really do that, all right? We have to have another way of solving it. There's actually 2 ways that you can solve this. The first way is probably the best way because it's a little long, but it works every single time, and it gives you the exact answer. Okay, and that's the quadratic formula. Okay, this right here is the quadratic formula. You need to know this for all the math that you're going to do for the rest of your math career. So make sure that you memorize that formula, and I'm not joking. You will need to memorize that. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so let's use that formula to solve this problem right here. So the first thing you should probably do is label what a, b, and c are. So a is the coefficient of the x squared. A is 1. B is the coefficient of the x. It is 2. C is the constant, that's negative 3. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and plug it into the equation. So x equals negative b, so negative 2, plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. Okay, so then x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root, that's 4. That negative cancels that negative, and you get plus 12 over 2. Okay, this is 16 in here, so x equals negative 2 plus or minus the square root of 16 over 2, which is x equals negative 2 plus or minus 4 over 2. Now, if I add the 4, I get negative 2 plus 4 is 2, divided by 2 is 1. And negative 2 minus 4 is negative 6, divided by 2 is negative 3. So there's my 2 solutions, negative 1, negative 3. Now, what does that mean? That means that it's going to cross the x-axis of the graph at 1 and negative 3. Okay, so we did some quadratics by graphing. So let's go ahead and try this by graphing and see if it confirms it. So remember, the first thing we did was we found the axis of symmetry. That was at negative b over 2a. Okay, so that would be negative 2 over 2 times A, which is 1. Okay, so that comes out to be negative 2 over 2 is negative 1. So we have an axis of symmetry axis of symmetry is at negative 1 right here. Okay, now, remember the vertex is on the axis of symmetry, and I find that by doing a table. Okay, I plug in negative 1 right here, and then I figure out what that is in here. So that'd be negative 1 squared would be 1, plus 2 times negative 1 would be negative 2, minus 3. So this is going to be negative 5. So negative 1, negative 5 is going to be right here. Okay. Did I do that right? Let's see. 1, minus 2, minus 3. Yeah. Okay, so now I'm going to plug in 0. Okay, because 0 is a friendly number. That's going to give me negative 3 right here. It's going to be right there. Okay, and remember that since this is symmetric, not only am I going to get 0 at, or negative 3 at 0, I'm going to get it at negative 2 as well. Okay, now I can plug 1 in here. 1 squared is 1, plus 2, minus 3 comes out to be 0. Okay, so 1 gives me 0, just like I wanted. And remember, it's symmetric, so negative 3 is also going to give me 0. And look at that. Here's my graph. Looks something like this. And it confirms my solutions because it crosses the x-axis there and there. Okay? So, good for that. Now let's move on to this one. So, x squared plus 3x minus 10, confirm your solutions by graphing. Okay, so first thing we're going to do is write down our formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. You need to write that down every time so that you learn it well. Okay, I'm going to label my A is 1, my B is 3, and my C is negative 10. Now I'm going to plug it into the formula. So x equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 3 squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2A. X equals negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 9 plus 40, that's this, all over 2. So x is negative 3 plus or minus the square root of 49 over 2. And x is negative 3 plus or minus 7 over 2. Okay, so that tells me if I add 7, I'm going to get 4 over 2, which is 2. And if I subtract 7, that's going to be negative 3 minus 7 is negative 10 over 2 is negative 5. So there's my two solutions. So if I wanted to check this graphically, okay, I would go back and I would negative b over 2a to find the axis of symmetry. So that's going to be negative 3 over 2 times 1. That's negative 1.5. Okay, so I've got axis of symmetry right there at negative 1.5. Now I'm going to go ahead and plug negative 1.5 into the equation here. And I'll get out my handy-dandy TI-84 plus C Silver Edition graphing calculator to do that. So I get negative 1.5 squared plus 3 times negative 1.5 minus 10. And I get negative 12.25. So unfortunately, that goes way off my graph. It's going to be like down here. We're just going to kind of estimate that. Okay, now a nice number to plug in there would be 1 or negative 1. Okay, if I plug that in, I'm going to get 1 minus 3 minus 10. So that's going to be negative 12. All right, so that doesn't really help me very much. It's just kind of right here. Let's try 0. 0 is going to give me negative 10. Do that in our head. Oh, that's right there. Okay, so that gives me another one. It's going to be right here. That's negative 3 is also going to give me negative 10 because it's symmetric. And let's pick one more. Let's go out here to 1. 1's an easy number to use. So if I plug 1 into this equation, I'm going to get 1 plus 3 is 4 minus 10 is negative 6. Okay, so 1, negative 6. That's going to give me a negative 6 right here as well. And then we can go ahead and try 2. Okay, 2 squared is 4. Plus 3 times 4. 3 times 2. 3 isn't 2, right? Yep. 3 times 2 is 6. So it's plus 6 minus 10. That comes out to be 0. Hey, that goes right there. Okay, and I've gone 1/2, 1.5, 2.5, 3.5. So 1/2, 1.5, 2.5, 3.5. Boom, right there. Hey, that's negative 5. This confirms. This graph confirms my solution. Okay. Fortunately, you won't have to confirm that with graphs very often because it takes a long time. So let's do this one here. I tell you what, pause the video for just a second, plug that formula into the quadratic formula and see what answer you get, and then jump back on here and see how you did. Okay, we're going to label A as 2, B is 5, and C is 2. We're going to write down our formula. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okie doke. So x is going to be negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 5 squared minus 4 times a times c all over 2 times a. So x is going to equal negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 25. That's going to be minus 16 all over 4. So x would be negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 9 over 4. That means that would be negative 5 plus or minus 3 over 4. So x is going to be, let's see, negative 5 plus 3 would be negative 2 divided by 4 would be negative 1/2. And negative 5 minus 3 would be negative 8 divided by 4 would be negative 2. There's my two solutions. And if you weren't sure, you could just take those two numbers and plug them back in here for x and confirm that you get 0. By the way, this should say equals 0. Okay. So hopefully that's what you got for your answer. All right, now, this problem right here would be a really tough one to graph because your answers would come out to be in between the hash marks on the graph, and so you're not going to be able to tell exactly what the answer is. But with the quadratic formula, you can get it every single time. So A in this case is negative 1, B is negative 2, C is 5. So just plug it into the equation. X equals negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay, so x is going to equal negative 2, which is positive 2, plus or minus the square root of negative 2 squared. Make sure that negative 2 is in parentheses because that's got to be a positive number. Minus 4 times a times c all over 2a. So x is 2 plus or minus the square root of 4 plus 20 over negative 2. X is 2 plus or minus the square root of 24 over negative 2. Okay, square root of 24, not a nice number. So, we could simplify this. We could rationalize this number. But we're going to go ahead and just figure out what this is approximately right now. So, 2 plus the square root of 24 divided by negative 2 comes out to be negative 3.449. So you're not going to figure that out by graphing. And negative 2 minus the square root of 24 divided by negative 2 is going to be 3.449. Okay. Oops, nope, I made a mistake. I knew that wasn't right. Sorry for the pause there. I typed that into my calculator wrong, so. Let's try it again. 2 minus the square root of 24. I put negative 2 last time. Divided by negative 2. That comes out to be 1.449. Okay, so that's better. Okay, again, you're not going to find those two answers on a graph. All right, now let's look at some models. So there's two models you need to know. This one we've already looked at before. This is the model for dropping an object. Okay, so remember that S is the height at which an object is dropped, T is the time in seconds, and H is the height at time T. Okay, so H equals negative 16 T squared plus S. Now, if you throw an object, that changes it, okay? So that gives us this formula: an object that is thrown, H equals negative 16 T squared plus V times T plus S. So this is still the height at which something is thrown. V is the velocity. T is still time in seconds, and H is the height. Okay, so your brother's riding in a hot air balloon over a lake from an altitude of 4,000 feet. He throws a rock straight down towards the water, okay? And when the rock leaves his hand, its speed is 30 feet per second. How long will it take the rock to hit the water? Okay, so if I plug this into this equation, I'm going to use the thrown formula, and I want it to hit the water. That's going to have a height of 0. It's going to be negative 16 T squared plus, it's going to be negative, it's going to be minus 30, because it's throwing down at 30 feet per second, times T plus 4,000. Okay, so we're going to solve this with a quadratic formula. X equals negative b, that's 30, plus or minus the square root of negative 30 squared, that's b squared, minus 4 times a times c, all over 2 times a. All right, this is definitely a question you want to do on a calculator. X is going to be 30 plus or minus the square root. Okay, 30 squared is 900. And then this is going to be plus 4 times 16 times 4,000 is going to be 256,000. All over negative 32. Okay. Now, so this is going to be 30 plus or minus the square root of 256,900 all over negative 32. Now, here's the thing, is I'm going to want the positive answer to this. I don't want the negative. There's two answers to these problems, okay? But negative answer would imply I need to go back in time, and that's not going to be a thing. Okay, so I'm going to square root 256,000. That's going to be 30 plus or minus 505.96 all over negative 32. Okay, so I want this top number to be negative because the bottom number is going to be negative. So I'm going to do the subtraction. 30 minus 505.96 is negative 475.96 divided by negative 32. Comes out to be about 14.9 seconds. Okay. So if he throws it down at 30 feet per second, it's going to take about 14.9 seconds to hit the water. All right, what if you drop, so you're on there as well, you drop a rock at exactly the same time, how long will it take to hit the water? So now we're going to use this formula right here, okay? So we'll go over here, and again, we want it to hit the water, negative 16 t squared plus 4,000, okay? So we'll add the 16 t squared to both sides, and we'll divide by 16. So 4,000 divided by 16 comes out to be 250. And then we'll square root that. That comes out to be 15.81 seconds. Okay. So by throwing it, you got almost an extra second less in time before it hits the water. Okay. Here's our assignment. I will see you guys in class. I look forward to seeing you. Have a great day.